Beowulf, First Fit. Funeral of Shield. Hear the song of spear Danes from sunken years. Kings had courage then, the kings of all tribes. We have heard their heroics, we hold them in memory. Shield Shafson was one, scourge of all tribes. Took a maul to the mead benches, mangled his enemies. He rose, and in rising he wrecked all his foes. A foundling at first, he flourished in might. A torrent of terror, war tested his mettle. So he bested and broached the borders of nations. The whale road was wide, but his warriors still crossed it. Gold came, and glory. A good king that was. So Shield had a son, sent as a gift, a cub for the courtyard, a comfort from God. For the nation had known long gnawing of troubles, great trials and tempests, long times of deep suffering. They were left leaderless, so the Lord of all life, the great glory ruler, gave them a chieftain. Shield's son he was, and summoned for glory. Beo was brilliant, a banner of northernness, the pride of great princes, the pride of his family. So warriors in warfare must be wise in that way. As ring-givers rise, they reach their companions. So later in life they won't be left on the field. His thanes will stand thick with him, their battle is joined. Such generous gifts are good for deep loyalty. Shield was still strong when summoned in time. This Dane king departed to death, the Lord's keeping. His thanes thanked his memory and thought a sea burial would keep the command their king had passed on to them. To the shore of the sea they shouldered the burden, committing the king who had covered his people. Silent, sheathed in ice, the ship rode the harbor. The ring prow was ready and rigged for the journey. They laid out their lord, beloved by all of them. Amidships the mast they remembered and placed. Treasures and tackle and trust most of all. Battle gear, blades edged, and bright gold and silver. Prestige presided there, piled honor on deck. I never had known a Norse ship so fitted. The weight of that wealth, the warriors whose tribute would sail with this ship with it sent far away. Their purpose presented to the power of the flood. They decked out his death and dealt with him bountifully. No little gifts, no less than left in his infancy. When set adrift on the sea, a sent-out waif, they left him lonely, lost but for destiny. They set high the standard, a standard of gold, high toward heaven with hearts full of grief. The ship they let slide to sea it departed, with minds full of mourning no man here can say. No wise one, no warrior, no wizened halberd can see or can say who will salvage that treasure. Second Fit. Hrothgar rises, Grendel stirs. So Beo then built some battle-strong towers, admired and esteemed an able Dane king, through long life and rule when left by his father, to his rule and reign, and his right to the throne. Then his heir, the great half-Dane, held sway in his turn, as long as he lived, their lord and their elder. He was father to four, this fighter and chieftain. One after another they entered this world. First Harogar, then Hrothgar, then Halga the Good. Then came a queen, future queen for Anella, a balm for the bed of that battling Swede. Then Hrothgar held firm, held victory in battle. Friends flocked to him, foes fled from him, and mighty his men grew, a masterful army. So a command came from him. The king thought to build a royal hall, rising in fame, erected by guildsmen, with gables and glory and greatness forever. A mead hall, a marvel for men to speak of forever. There his throne would be, and thriving with gifts, he would give out those gifts all God had bestowed. Kingly gifts, but no common lands or cruel giving of souls. This hall, I've heard, was a haven for craftsmen. Through Middle-earth men were summoned, making way to the building. Soon it stood, magnificent, soon glory rose. Finally finished, in full view it stood, the hall of Heorot, as he spoke the name. The worthy king had willed it, whose word was law. So he kept his kingly word and came with rings. Treasures and torques, the tables were heaped, the hall reared up high, with horn-gabled corners, baiting the battle flames that burning would come. Hatred for Hrothgar was held in abeyance, but a son-in-law soon would bring samples of rage. Now a demon demented, in darkness a prowler, held a hard grudge when he heard with great pain. The great and the good with glory were feasting. The shop sang their songs, and strings were well played. The harp filled the hall, a herald of joy. So skilled in his singing, he sang the creation. The Almighty had ordered the earth to be fashioned. Shining, the single plain surrounded with waters. He summoned the splendor of sun and of moon, lifting his lamps, their lights for Earthwadu. He filled all the fields with fruit for the tasting. He gave us such greenery, good leaves and branches, and made man and beast that all move in his quickening. The place was full peaceful and pleasant for men, till finally a fiend, fresh out of hell, began to give grief with ghoulish wild haunting. This grim monster was Grendel, gifted with terror, haunting marches and moors, marauder of villages. Malicious and miserable in marshes he lived, for some time with the terrors, the type who were banished, by the creators, kinsmen of Cain, who had blood on his hands. The eternal Almighty had everlasting vengeance for Abel. Cain had gotten